Alright, I'm going through and sanding this. I'm actually just going to use a spreader to pull it back all the way across just so I can save my trim masking tape. It's pretty expensive. So what I'm going to do is just pull this back. I've already gone from the edge all the way over to here, but I'm just pulling this back with the plastic spreader to protect the molding. And I'm running a piece of 80 grit along the edge just to get it cleaned off. You can see where I stopped right in there. I'm going to take this off all the way down to the metal, all the way across here and the rear. And then I'll come back and finish it with 80 grit just to smooth it out a little bit, but it's just taking too long with 180 up front. And 80 grit on that sharp peak there is taking it right off pretty quick. So I'm going to go all the way around the front and the rear. And I'm pretty much done here. I've just gone down in this groove just to where I've broken over the edge to the metal. I'm not going to try to get all this out. It's still bonded pretty well. And then molding lays right over on the edge of this anyway. So I'm just going to go across the edge like I've done here on the other side. And then go across the back with the spreader too, and then sand that out of the edge or the end. And I'll be back ready to mask it off for some epoxy. All right, it's ready to prime. I just need to blow it off and mask it, but since I got to let the epoxy set up for its 30-minute induction time, I'm going to go ahead and mix it now that I know it's ready to be primed. And by the time I get it masked off, the epoxy will be ready to go. I just need to go through now. I broke over this edge with 80 and then 180. So that it's sanded all the way past that edge. There's still white around the inside rim. I'm going to hit that with red Scotch-Brite and probably tape around the sunroof molding as I close it. Just put tape around the entire seal and then vent it in the back, wrap the tape around it, and then seal it. That way it can just mask itself. I don't have to put anything in that hole there. I need to pull this molding back with trim masking tape. That's why I'm going to allow that 30 minutes to mask it off, because it's going to take me at least that long, and the epoxy will be ready to go then. Alright, time for epoxy. Alright, I wiped it down probably 10 times to make sure it's good and clean. There's no trace of that paint stripper left. I've got trim masking tape on the rear and on the front. I'm going to try to leave that there. I'm going to try to leave it just like this, and maybe just throw another sheet of plastic over it and not disturb that trim masking tape. I'm just about out of it. I'm probably going to go get another roll just to have in case I have to pull it off, but I'm going to try to just leave it there for the whole job. I'm going to tack it off real quick, and I'll be putting the primer on it. Alright, that's going to get a 1 hour flash, and I'll be back with the 2K primer. Alright, I've actually let this sit for probably 3 hours. This is just one coat of epoxy. I'm not going to show you the primer going on. It's just going to be gray on gray. You won't be able to tell anything, but I'll throw some guide coat on it, just like I did on the BMW roof, so that I can tell everywhere I've sanded. I don't need guide coat to actually be a guide. I just want to use it to make sure that I sand every part of the area that's got primer on it. Because if you still see some black, you know you're going to have texture in your primer, so it just ensures it gets flattened out. We'll go ahead and get that on now. You technically could just paint directly to this. You could just go straight to base coat now, but I don't like how this stuff it lays out pretty flat, but it never does go on perfectly. There's always a little dust in it, seems like, and occasionally there's a fisheye or two in it for some reason. I think I can see some right in there. Some spots I don't really like. I just don't really trust painting directly onto it. I'd rather put some primer over it, give me something to sand flat. And I really need to go into a white sealer for this anyway, so even if I wanted to paint directly onto this, I would have to go to white sealer to get the value shade up close enough to the white. But you really could just go ahead and spray sealer and base, or just go straight to base coat at this stage of it right now, but I just don't like how this stuff lays out every time. It's never perfect. Plus you'd probably get some mapping in here where you had some feather edges, and I do have probably some 80 grit left here and there, so I need something to fill that. That'll give me something to sand down nice and flat before I start putting the color on it. That'll give it less texture anyway. Be back when I'm ready to paint it. Okay, the surface is ready. I just ran the DA over it with the soft interface pad and 400 grit. I dropped the sunroof in, ran it all the way back, sanded along that edge again just to get the edge flat where it's in contact here. I'm gonna double check all this and make sure I want to leave it like this, but I'm probably just gonna pull all this back where I've hit it with the DA and just retape this edge if I can get it down in there enough. But anyway, I've got tape here over my trim tape, but I got to tape over this again to make sure nothing flakes off the primer. The primer doesn't flake off of this into my paint, so I had to pull back the sides. I just pulled it back and stuck it to the glass just so I wouldn't have to stick it to the paint. But I've got blue painters taped down in there past that edge now to where I primed. I pulled it back, sanded all the way down in there, and then now I've got it taped a little further back. So that's all the way down in the channel. Not much is in contact with this paint. I'm just trying to keep from lifting this if I go to pull it off in 2 or 3 days and it wants to stick, so this will be safer than just yellow tape. I may decide to drop this down, run it back, and mask this inside off, but when you pull it back, the little air deflector pops up. I may have to just jam it down somehow. So I really don't want this in contact right in here to where it's actually going to leave an edge that can peel, so I'm just going to double check that. I may end up pulling it back. But for the primer, it was fine like that. Same thing on this side. Just tape this down to the glass. I'm going to pull more plastic over it. I've got a piece left over that's really going to come to about right here on front and rear. It's going to stop. This piece here I saved. I pulled it out to do this with, and it was too short. It'll run over to into here, but that's fine. This has got a little dust on it, but I'm going to blow all this off again. That piece will run pretty much the length of the car. It just won't wrap down. And I'll cut it out back around here again, around the roof, but I'm gonna go ahead and put some more tape over all this so none of this flakes off. And I'll cut the plastic along that and along the blue tape, and it'll be ready to go. Alright, just about ready to go here. This had to sit for about 3 days, so I threw a little sheet of plastic over it and held it down with some magnets just so I can get to it so nothing's settling on the roof. I'm gonna pull that off. I may save that for covering something else later. That's probably a good 6-7 feet long. I've got a couple of headlight covers here off of BMW somebody dropped off. I actually brought them to the guy I work with. He brought them to work and left them with me. Just got to clear those. I'm going to get this masked off after I get the base on this. So those will be ready for the clear when I get to clearing this. I got to wash the curtains off and get the floor wet, and I'll be ready to go here shortly. Alright, sealer's ready to go. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I've only got 2 coats of primer on the roof. It only really needed that, just enough to have something to sand. I didn't really need a lot of build on this just because I was trying to cover up mainly just epoxy and all my feather edges. This only got 2 coats, and I sanded about half the top one off. That's about it. I'm going to put 1 coat of white sealer on this just to get it close. It's not necessary to seal this, but I got to get it close to the white so I don't have to use so much base coat. And I probably don't have enough anyway even to get it completely covered. Since this paint's so expensive, I went ahead and just bought 1 pint to do this. In case I had an issue, I'd have a little extra, but I only bought half a pint of the pearl. Be back in a second to spray it. Alright, that's going to get about a 20-minute flash. I'll be back for the base coat. Go to white base. Alright, that's 2 coats of base. I think that's plenty. I'd end up using just about that whole pint if I went over with the third one. And I think it looks pretty even like it is, so I'm just going to leave it like this. So it's going to get at least 2 coats of pearl on it. And it's really about all the paint I've got to put on it anyway. At least the pearl. I've cut me a little window in here to check it. And I'm doing a spray card. This has got the same stuff on it that the roof has. You can see it's the same as the roof. I'm checking it on the quarter, which this does have pearl on it, but I'm just trying to check the shade. Make sure it's not too light or dark. It looked like it was going to be too dark, but it actually looks lighter than this. So once I get the pearl on it, like at this angle right here, it looks pretty good. Right in there. It's hard to tell without the pearl, but I'm at least trying to get the base coat the same shade. So I'm going to put 2 coats of pearl on the roof and on this, because I know I'm going to use at least 2 coats. And hopefully that'll be close enough. I'll open this window back up and check it again. If I was going to blend, it wouldn't be a problem, but I want to try to get it as close as I can, at least right here where it's going to be butted up against the roof rail. And I do have enough paint, I think, to come back and do maybe a third mist coat of pearl right along this area here, where it's right next to the roof rail. It won't matter if I blend it that way. There's nothing to have to butt it to in the center of the roof. So we'll go ahead and spray. Once the base is flashed on the roof, I'm going to spray 1 coat of pearl there, and then 1 coat on the spray card. Then repeat that. And then check the spray card against the quarter panel right here. And if I need to go a little more pearl, I'll put it on here first. See if that makes it match the quarter. If it does, then I'll mist a 3rd coat of pearl on each side by the roof rail. And I'd go across the whole roof if I have enough, but I'm at least going to focus on those 2 spots there if I have to do it. Here's a quick look at what the pearl looks like if you've never seen it. You can sort of see through it. It's just a bunch of crystal silver effects. That's what it's called. The 1020S is the toner. Crystal silver effects. It's got a little violet pearl and galaxy blue effects, which is looks like only half a gram or so in there. And most of it's this crystal silver that they call it, and then some clear balancer and binder, and something called flop control agent, which stabilizes the particles. But it's just a translucent pearl. I've got half a pint here. This is only half full, so I'm going to just mix all this. See how far it gets me. This is the first coat of pearl. I'm a little bit faster with that just because I don't need to make as much coverage with it. I just got to get it even. So that should save enough for another coat and maybe a third on each rail. Alright, after 2 coats it's looking pretty good. Let me get this out of the way. There's no clear on it, but you can see the pearl in it now. That effect. It's pretty darn close. It's not the exact same angle as the quarter, so that's a little bit of a problem, but I think we're in business. And that's the roof. You see, it's almost exactly the same. Better way to do this would be to just tape this thing to the car right here and just extend this pass over it, so it's the exact same angle and number of passes and pattern and all that. This is close enough. With it being up on the roof, this should be fine. And there's also a piece of painted trim that goes in between here, so, and it's not black, it is painted, so I'm trying to get as close as I can because that piece right there that goes inside that drip rail is going to be directly butted up against what I'm putting on here. So I think we're good with 2 coats. I got a little bit left, but I don't really have enough to make a difference, I don't think, on a 3rd coat. So I'm going to go ahead and let this sit probably 30 to 45 minutes since it's got almost 4 coats of base on it. Let it dry really good before I clear it, and clear this with the same amount of clear. I'll probably just keep this card just as a reference. I had that leftover pearl from the last time when I replaced the front bumper, but it was a different mix. I guess maybe they didn't mix it to the VIN when I did that, but this is a VIN matched mix, so it's got a little bit different pearl mix for some reason, so I didn't use any of the other I had left over. I'll let it sit for about 45 minutes and I'll be back to clear it. Alright, clear coat time. Now it's going to get one more. Well, it looks like it's about a 98% match. It might be just a little bit darker, but I think it's close enough. Being up on the roof. Obviously, I've got all the masking off now. I didn't think to take a shot before I pulled it. It's got the typical dust in it just from a horizontal panel, but it's nice and even at least. This is how I held that little air deflector down. I just stuck a big nut I had in there. It's laying around. Gotta pull that out and this will pop back up. I gotta pull the masking off that I had for the primer. Next thing is to buff out the top, just to get all the little dust nibs out. It's better to leave all the masking on while you do the buff job, that way it didn't get all over the car, but I wanted to make sure that if I got any paint, any blow-by overspray onto this molding, that I went ahead and took the plastic off so that I could get the paint off while it was still fresh. Without knowing it's there or not, I didn't want to leave the plastic on. I'm going to wash it anyway, so it's not a big deal if I get the compound on the rest of the car. Going to put the antenna in. Once I get everything polished out, then I'll wash it, make sure nothing's leaking, and get this thing cleaned up for him to pick up in a couple days. See you later. A quick look before it heads out of here. Looks even better outside. Got everything in, antenna's done. Just finished washing it. Pretty good match. See you guys on the next one.